Hello and welcome to the Right Book Company Author Talk today. This is one of a series of talks with authors that we've worked with for the past 10 years or so. My name is Sue Richardson and I'm the Publishing Director at the Right Book Company. And my guest today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome. He is a transformational coach, and he works with business owners, key people, and financial planners and advisors particularly. He says, when we understand how our mind works and realize that we don't have to try to control our world, we are free to be our true selves. This is a wonderful place to create from. May I welcome John Dashfield.
Hi, Sue.
Hey, John.
Good to see you.
Great to see you too. Great to see you too. And I should introduce a very important piece of the puzzle. Your wonderful book, The Client-Centered Financial Advisor. I'm just going to read something from the back here because I think this is great. John Dashfield shares a life-changing understanding in a way that is engaging, thought-provoking, and makes ultimate sense. It challenges our conventional wisdom, which is why I highly recommend reading this book. That was from a Jeff Buckland, chartered financial planner, written about your book. Believe it or not, 8 years ago we published this book, and still going strong, still selling well, still, I hope, everything it represents what you're all about, John, which is what we're here to discover and to talk about today. So let's dive in, shall we? You are someone who likes to provoke thought, who likes to encourage us to think differently. Tell us a bit about your background to start with, because I know you yourself started out as an IFA, didn't you? Is that right?
I did. Yeah. I was in the world of employment for 10 or 11 years, and then discovered that really wasn't the world for me, and I wanted to own my own business. And this is going back to the 1980s, a long time ago. And I started reading books on sort of self-help and psychology, and I set a goal that I wanted to own my own business. Didn't know how, really had no experience of that. I just thought, I want to work for myself. And then I found out that the company that I worked for, they had about 300 or 400 self-employed financial advisors who sold their products. And I discovered that they would allow an employee of the company to give it a go, and if you failed, they would give you your job back, or
wow.
a job back.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a bit of a safety net there. So I resigned and I became a self-employed financial advisor for that company. Unfortunately, I didn't have to go back, and that stint, if we call it that lasted 15 years. And I always had a passion for, I guess you call it personal development. Was read a lot of books, and I hired coaches for myself, and I found that really helpful. And the part of being a financial advisor I liked was the client interaction, and I wasn't so keen on the technical side of it. And so I sold that business, the financial advice business, at the very end of 2005. And for a couple of years, I'd been coaching people. So in 2006, it became my full-time business. And it still is, although in the years since I've had it, I've reinvented it a few times.
Have you indeed? I mean, I suppose it's an interesting step to take from financial advisor to coach. But, you know, as you say in the book, you know, essentially financial advice is a people business. You know, people may think of it as quite a technical thing. And of course, there is a level of technical advice that you need to be able to give. But this is really where your kind of particular kind of take is, isn't it? That the idea that a financial advisor can go past the technical stuff and really see into what the person that they're building that relationship with is really all about, and therefore give them more relevant advice. Would that be a fair way to sum it up?
Yeah. I think let's say the training to become a financial planner or advisor is all technical in nature. And yet, as I said in the book, it's a people business, right? Because I was writing a blog this morning, and the point I was making was that, well, you can give the greatest advice in the world, but if it's not in the context of the client's life, because to me, money's a means to an end, right? So it's what the money can do for us, or what we can do with the money, that ultimately matters. So there needs to be a context for it, and a lot of the financial advice business hasn't really done that. It's really pushed financial products and advice, and I think a lot of the time it's kind of a bit lost. So I think the ability of really good financial planners and advisors is that what they're really good at is in a way getting under the skin of a client. You know, who is this person? What really matters to them? What could get in the way of their plans? But how they do, you know, what is their quality of life? So it's much more of a holistic kind of approach. And I think part of the reason I wrote the book is because I think it's becoming more and more relevant, because we've got AI, which is really going to be taking over routine work in increasing amounts, not just in financial services, but in law, in accounting, in all the professions. Anything that can be done by a machine will be done by a machine. And that really encompasses all of the routine work of these kind of businesses. So what you're left with, you either become very, very specialized in something, but there's only a certain amount of room for that, or you really much more focus on the human side of the business. So it's understanding someone's psychology, it's being able to coach someone, it's being able to help the client get really clear on what they want. And so it's all of those skills, being a great listener, and all of that. Really, traditionally in business, most of that has been taught or shared as being techniques, where I haven't gone down that route, because I tried that for a number of years, and it kind of didn't seem to work that well. So I've taken a very different approach.
So tell us a bit more about that, John. Tell us a bit more about your approach.
Well, I was very fortunate in that I'd followed many different avenues in learning about psychology and how people work, and it was all great, and it's such a fascinating subject. But there were kind of holes in it, really, and for me, and a lot of that was around the fact that most of it was based on sort of practices or processes or techniques, and I include myself in that. You know, for over 12 years, I meditated twice a day. You know, very in a very religious way. You know, I was very committed to the process. And then in 2011, I came across an understanding of the mind, which wasn't based on techniques at all. It was an understanding rather than a technique. And it was really an understanding that when people grasp it, it really leads to more clarity of mind, more presence. Your people are less what would you say, disturbed, by their erroneous thinking. So if you're a human being, you will get erroneous thinking. That comes with being a human being. It's not a realistic proposition to think that you can be happy all of the time.
Yeah.
But people without understanding often get really scared of their own thinking, right? And so this understanding, it first and foremost, it really helped me to understand myself. And a kind of pivotal moment when I was learning about this was there's a psychologist, wonderful psychologist by the name of George Pransky. And what George was saying about this understanding is that the most important thing is what he calls the health of the helper. So in the intervention with the client, it's the degree of understanding in the practitioner about their own how their own mentality functions, and that is really the key piece, rather than techniques.
Mm.
And what I thought when I heard that, well, surely that would be the case in all human interactions, that the health of relationships, any kind of relationship, including professional relationships, really has its foundation in the healthy psychological functioning of the practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
See, so I thought, well, if a financial planner or advisor was working with a client, their ability to be clear-minded, to be present, to not have a hidden agenda, just to be there with the client, is really paramount in drawing those same qualities out in the client, so that the client can think clearly. Because to me, what it looks like is that if you're a professional person, you want to be drawing out your client's best thinking in your interactions. So that's kind of where I went with that, and that was you could say my working hypothesis, 12 years ago, and that's still standing firm, if not firmer, today.
It's fascinating, isn't it, John, that there's that kind of, I suppose, as a coach, or as any kind of person who's serving, I mean, as let's take your financial advisors. I mean, they are essentially needing to be completely confident in themselves and clear about, as you say, if the clearer they are about themselves, the easier it is for them to get out of the way and focus completely on their client. That you talk about the different levels of relationship in the book, and I know you kind of suggest that that level one relationship, which is it's all about me, and then there's level two, which is it's give and take, and then there's level three, and you say no, it's not give and take here, it's level three. It's where I am 100% focused on you and your needs and how I can meet them as an advisor. That actually takes a lot of confidence and a lot of I suppose an ability to just, as you said, just be there for the client, to be really listening, to be empathic, to do all of those things that coaches do. You are, I suppose, it's a perfect step that you've taken, and a step that now, of course, you can help people like financial advisors to do their work better.
Yeah, well, I see. For me, if I look at my sort of early part of my career, in a way, although I went out and I did the right thing for people, I was still quite self-absorbed.
Yeah.
In the sense that when I started out, it was a sales job, so I was concerned about the making the sale, concerned about my numbers, and that's probably where most people start. And yet, what I began to learn was that all the time I had me and my perceived needs as part of the equation, that was detracting from my ability to serve my client. and actually it didn't do me any good. You can't see that when you're not conscious of it. But what I've come to see is that the less of you that is in the relationship, the professional relationship, the better the relationship is going to be.
Yeah.
So it's really 100% about serving the client.
Yeah.
You see, and when we can do that, it's kind of like all boats rise with the tide, right? Because human beings, like all creatures, psychologically, we're wired to detect threat or danger. So when someone has got their own perceived needs in their mind and they're with their client, at some level, the client will always know that.
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating. See? Yeah.
And so it diminishes the potential of the relationship. And the reason I found this understanding so helpful is that it's not that you won't get thoughts about yourself. You can't stop your thinking. You can't completely control your thinking. It's just not possible. So the best you're going to do is to understand it. So if you have thoughts coming in, sometimes I get nervous before a meeting or before a presentation, right? But there's a difference between having those thoughts and kind of engaging with them and believing them, and just having them and letting them sort of come in. You're aware of them, and then you just let them pass through again, because thought is transient. Thought is energy. So if you don't interfere with it, it will just come in and it will leave. So having that understanding is incredibly helpful, because ultimately what it does, it deepens the human connection that you have with someone. It allows you to listen to someone with an open mind. It stops you exhibiting controlling behavior in any way. So you're not thinking, oh, is this going in the right way? Do they like me? Is all those kind of questions that we can have, that are kind of what you might call those sort of more self-absorbed kind of questions,
Yeah, absolutely. Totally get that. And of course, there's a lot of fear around money anyway, isn't there? It's like you say, I mean, what you were saying earlier about, actually money is just a means to an end. It's just, what we do with it and how we use it and stuff that's important, not the money itself. But actually we get very kind of stuck in this fear around money and talking about money with somebody else. We really need that very high level of trust, and we need to feel that the person has got our back and that they're not in it for some kind of, I mean, obviously they need to earn a living themselves. We get that. But if it's all technical and it's all sell, it's really hard, isn't it? I mean, I was just it struck me, something you said there reminded me of, earlier on in the year, I decided to change my car insurance, because I bought a new car and my car insurance was ridiculously expensive. The new quote was just ridiculously out of order. So I went shopping around, as you do, and I ended up with something, a much better deal. But part of the deal was, they said to me, we'll give you a ridiculous discount if you move your home insurance to us. Now, this home insurance, my flat, the home insurance is next to nothing really. But I said, oh yeah, why not? I'll do that. When I came to cancel my home insurance and the time came up, I had one of these chats with the advisor I told them on the chatbot thing, this is why I'm leaving. And, perfectly straightforward. I'm leaving because I'm gone somewhere else because they gave me a discount on my car insurance. And this person said, oh, tell me what, if nothing's changed, I can probably reduce the insurance for you. And the conversation went on and on. I kept saying the same thing over and again. No, you don't understand me. I don't need this insurance anymore. I've got another insurance. It doesn't matter what you're going to say to me about how many pounds you can knock off. It's, they weren't listening. They didn't care. Now, okay, it wasn't a chatbot. It was a human being, actually, but on a chat line. And I thought, this is a really interesting approach to sales, isn't it? That you actually cannot hear when somebody says, I'm going. I'm going to get you back by offering it to you much, much cheaper when the door's closed. And of course, it'll stop me going back next year because I think I don't want to talk to people who can't hear me or aren't listening to me.
Yeah. I mean, being able to listen with no agenda is a skill. Yeah. And I can't speak for other people, but for me, it's one I have to keep returning to, and I have to, you know, and even though it's a skill, it's one that you can really easily like let go and get in your head again, you know. So for me, bringing yourself back to that is, for me, it looks like a lifelong thing, you know, like the quality of the listening that you bring is something I think you have to keep bringing your attention back to, because it's so easy to let it go. And you know, we hear different, you know, we go as human beings, we go in and out of different states of mind all the time, all day long, right? And you know, sometimes they're lower states of mind, sometimes they're higher states of mind. And the thing about listening that's so fascinating is that in different states of mind, we hear differently.
Yes, of course.
And so there's an unlimited potential to the quality of the listening that we can bring, and it's such, you know, we live in a society that does a lot of talking and not enough listening. And that's not just in business, that's everywhere, right? And your example is just so great, because when people are so zoned in, you know, that person in the call center that you spoke to, you know, they've got their quota to meet and they might have a bonus riding on it, and you know, their manager's breathing down their neck, you know, and so you can see that people don't listen because they're scared.
Yes.
You know, their state of mind is imbued with fear, and so rather than just being human to human, it just turns into, you know, they're trying to bludgeon you in the quote, you know, and they kind of know what they're doing, but the fear takes over.
Yeah, it tells you desperation, isn't it? I think it's awful. Yeah, I mean, you know, I was slightly irritated enough with the company to not go back, but actually I felt really sorry for that person as well, because there was a bit of me that thought, God, what a rotten job to have to be kind of, you know, like you're just kind of in this place where you're not hearing anything. You just, please buy this from me. Anyway, that's sales, I guess. But it's also potentially, I think, you know, we're all in sales all the time, aren't we? You know, whatever we're doing, you know, and that whole, I just think it's struck me in a way that client-centered anything, whether you're an advisor, whether you're, you know, selling a product of some kind, that your premise that actually if you know that it's not about techniques, well, in a sense it's about a skill, which is a skill of listening and a skill of being able to put yourself in that other person's shoes and understand what their needs are and then seek ways to meet those needs, strikes me as hugely sensible and I think interesting. I think, you know, maybe you were a little ahead of your time in some ways, but perhaps now your approach is something that more people share. Would you say that we've moved on a little in some ways? Maybe not the car insurance people or the home insurance people. But
yeah. Well, certainly, I think the financial advice business is changing, and you know, I think as any industry changes, it'll attract a different kind of person to it.
Yes.
So you look at the financial advice business, you know, back in the sort of 70s and 80s and perhaps early 90s when I went into it, it was a bit like the Wild West, right? You know, and the regulation wasn't anywhere near what it was, and that really started coming in, you know, when I was in the early part of when I was in the business, and the regulation is quite heavy, well, very heavy now. And I don't think the regulation has actually improved the public's trust in it. But the professionalisation of it has really happened. I mean, it has happened, and I deal with a lot of financial professionals, and they are professional, and the industry has really been kind of cleaned up, but that doesn't mean there's still loads of potential, right? And what I think is it's going through. It sort of went. It's been quite interesting to observe it, because it's kind of gone from a very sales focused business to a much more like a profession, if you like, and that's changed it enormously. And it's going to go through another change, and it's kind of happening now, like I said. So because of AI, and then you've got to remember, like, the boomer generation, who are all retiring now and have got all the money, really. They, a lot of them are tech savvy, but a lot of them aren't as tech savvy as the generations that are coming through, Gen X and Gen Y. See, they have grown up with technology. So for them to look after their finances through technology is probably their preferred way of doing things. So if you want to survive and thrive as a face-to-face financial professional, you've got to bring more to the table than just being able to affect a transaction.
Yeah.
It's not going to work anymore. It won't be that long before it's not financially viable to be a purely transactional financial advisor. There's downward pressure on fees as well. People want more for their money. They expect more for their money. They're less tolerant of the sales tactics that were used, in times gone by. So for loads of reasons. So if you're a professional person and things are changing and you don't like it, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
You because you can't control that.
Mm.
So I think the ability to reinvent yourself in your life is really important. And again, to me, that comes from what I'm touching on in the book, which is change isn't hard when you understand the psychology. Change is hard when you don't.
Yeah.
So any business, you go into any businesses, and I've had the privilege to work with quite a few businesses over the years, and the biggest challenge, or let's say one of the biggest challenges for any business is dealing with change. And keeping up with how things are changing. And even in the stock market, you look at the companies in the FTSE 100, and you look at the businesses that were in the FTSE 100 15 years ago, and there's a big difference. A lot of them aren't there anymore. Yeah. Because they struggle with change, right? Yeah. So that ability to be more aware, more present, more a bit, just, it's kind of like a built-in ability to change in us, but what gets in the way is our own ego, because the ego, and we all have the ego doesn't want you to change, because what the ego sees is that change is dangerous. Don't change, because the unknown is dangerous. So the ego will really do its best to keep you where you are, and unless you understand it, you get controlled by it.
Yeah. Wow, we could talk about this for hours and hours. I find it fascinating, and but unfortunately, we are running out of time very fast. So sadly, we're going to have to park this conversation. No doubt, you and I will continue many hours ahead outside of this room. But for now, John, I just want to say thank you so much for spending this author talk with us, and for telling us all about your very important work and your wonderful book. We look forward to hearing more from your blog, which is at your website, is it not? clientcenteredadvisors.com. So if people want to follow John, obviously connect on LinkedIn, follow him on his blog. Loads of great advice and words of wisdom about how you can create these wonderful client-centered relationships for yourself, whatever your field, your world is. Thank you very much for being with us, John.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I really appreciate the opportunity. And if it wasn't for you, my book would never have been born and brought into the world. So, I'm ever grateful for that and everything that you did for me.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you, John. Wow, the wonderful John Dashfield, and client-centered financial advisor is available to order now from your favorite book retailer, of course, and also bookpress.com if you want to buy it directly from our website, which every little helps. So please consider doing that. So this has been our author talk with John Dashfield, but there are many more to come. Our next one is tomorrow, I believe, which is with Bev and the wonderful Dr. Declan Woods. And so please do find that. It's when I say tomorrow, that is the 6th of July at 9:20. But having said that, of course, it is also available if you can't make that time on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as is this one and all the rest. And if you happen to be thinking about your own book project, please do come and talk to us. You can book yourself in if your book is related to your business and it's a non-fiction book that's going to help you build your business and your brand. Please do come and talk to us. You can book a discovery call with me directly, completely free of charge, therightbookcompany.com/discovery. And I look forward to seeing you at the next author talk. Cheerio, bye.